On this episode of Salute to the Years, we put on our Imagineering caps and we play What If? What if Walt Disney World added a fifth gate? What would be in it and how would it be set up? What if Walt Disney decided to put another park somewhere in the country? Where would it be? Would it be a big park or a little park? Find out on episode 62 of Salute to the Years. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Salute to the Years. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Erica.
And on this episode, we are going to put our Imagineering caps back on. Our what if caps, I guess you could say.
Yeah, we did this back when D23 convention happened. And we really did some what they call blue sky talk.
Right.
And what would you do and what if and things that they were dreaming about possibly being able to do.
Right. So what also kind of spun this topic for us is, if you don't know, Universal down in Florida is about to, or they're working on, a whole nother gate, a whole nother park they're calling Epic Universe. And it's going to have everything from How to Train Your Dragon and classic monsters and more Harry Potter and Nintendo. It has all kinds of stuff with it, with more hotels and restaurants and everything else. It's a whole nother park.
It's a whole nother universe. It's a
Right.
whole nother epic universe. I mean, it really is going to be pretty incredible. I am excited about the How to Train Your Dragons part.
Yeah,
And that it's been one of our favorite,
Absolutely.
characters in series ever.
How can you not like Toothless?
I don't know. If you really don't, you're crazy. But this kind of, you actually woke up in the middle of the night the other night thinking about this.
I did, because I've been like, okay, I need to come up with some other kind of topic that's different.
But and I was like, what?
Yeah.
What is it that woke you up in the middle of the night the other night exactly? That you were like, oh, we need to talk about this.
Well, we'd been kind of talking about this subject and the possibility of a new park or a new gate earlier that evening, so I think it was already on my brain a little bit. But when I woke up, I was like, hello, stupid, why don't we just talk about this? This is your topic right here. Just come up with an idea of what you think either that fifth gate or a new park, whether that's in Florida or somewhere else, would be.
It's really hard for me to do this. I'm very creative and I have a very creative style and brain, and I'm very resourceful, but when it comes to the let me just whatever you want type
and these are the ones I like.
And you and Jackson both are really good at being able to just pull that out and all of that. And so it's harder for me to do that. If you give me a hey, I want information, I want you to create something based on this topic or this thing. I'm pretty good at that. I can pull things out of that. I do that all the time for work, but to do it just where I'm what would you do? Just pull it out of your rear. I'm Frozen?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I'm how narrowed down do I have to get? Because I can go big.
I want to say first and foremost, we want to hear what you guys would do in this. So we decided that we're going to talk about the possibility of either a fifth gate in Florida.
Right.
So that means right now you have 4 gates. You have Animal Kingdom, Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, and Epcot. You would be adding a 5th park, right? You'd be adding a 5th gate to Walt Disney World Resort. Or would you do a whole new park somewhere else?
Right. And by whole new park, we mean it's like how they created Shanghai and Hong Kong or
Disneyland Paris.
Right. It's going to have a new Magic Kingdom. It's going to have other things associated with it that are in probably other parks and probably some standalone on its own, just a different part of the country.
Yeah. So we do want to hear what you guys are thinking about, dreaming about. What do you like? What do you not like? What do you want to see in the future? Not that we have any pull in this, but we're just really curious.
Right.
And because it is hard for me to come up with these things, like to like think through these things
Right.
on my own, I love hearing other people's ideas.
This is one of those topics, especially when you have other Disney people around that come up with ideas. That's fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Just the brainstorming part is fun.
I think it's one of the things we love and respect so much about the Imagineers in general is that none of them do this alone, right? This is done in groups of people, and this is done with teams of people that come up with all these different ideas and all these different creative aspects. And it's one of the things that we love and respect so much about the Imagineering process. And so we want to make sure that you guys are included in that. So these are kind of some of the things that we've come up with that we would like to see, but we want to hear what you guys want to see as well.
Right. And we have no insight to what Disney's going to do. These are just things we're talking about.
Yeah, this is just us. This is not, like, there's no rumors that we've heard.
Right.
There's no, like, we know nothing.
Right.
So, like, this is our version of blue sky of, like, what if,
right,
like, things we would like to see, not rumors.
Right. So for years and years and years, there have been rumors of another park somewhere in the country.
Right.
Right. There's been rumors. They had plans, and it was pretty close for one in Virginia out by D.C.
Yes, that one is like legit. That
one was legit, yeah, and it was historical based.
Yes.
There was Westcott out in Long Beach, out in California. But there's also been the rumors of Texas for years. There's also been rumors of southern Missouri.
Yeah. We had this talk about, okay, if you were to put another park somewhere in the country, how do you compete with the weather aspect that California and Florida have?
Right.
Right. Yes, they both have weather patterns that can create certain days, weeks that are scarier than others. But for the most part, weather's pretty temperate year round.
Right. It gets hot in Florida, and you can get to experience rain almost every day, and you have to watch out for some hurricanes, but it's not going to get freezing cold.
For the most part, no. I mean, you have very few days where it is like, even around the freezing mark in that 35 to 40 degree range. So very few days that you ever have to worry about that. And so it's a great atmosphere for that. It's like, how do you compete with that as far as an amusement park? Now, we know that there are amusement parks all around the country. There's amusement parks in Minnesota, and there's amusement parks in, Ohio, and, and in South Missouri, and in the Branson area. And so it's not like they don't exist.
Right.
It's not like they don't, like, happen other places. But typically, those parks are seasonal.
Yeah.
They have seasons, and they are not open year round. They are not open pretty much every day of the year. They are typically only open like spring break through Christmas. Like, Silver Dollar City is usually open.
Yeah, and more of them are getting to the point where they'll be open like maybe a few weeks during the Christmas season.
Right, like the first couple.
But it's not an everyday thing. Part of that is because of weather. Part of that's because of staffing.
Yes.
Disney and Universal get to use so many college students that it helps keep it open, right? And they're also in very touristy towns.
Yes.
Which also helps. So we have to try and figure out somewhere where weather's not going to completely throw you off. You would think it would have to be somewhere where it's closer to an airport. Maybe somewhere that has a college fairly close, a big university. Not only for that way, you're not just completely relying on like a college like DCP or something like that. You can have
people in,
right. Yeah. You have people coming in there to work pretty constantly.
Which, for me personally, as much as I would love to be like, hey, how about here?
Right.
And, you have this aspect of Kansas City, having such a tie to Walt and his creative start in the Laugh-O-Gram Studios, and having, which we have a teaser on that like later about some information about that. But you know, Walt has such a connection to Kansas City in his start in cartoons and
right. Yeah. If you didn't know, his first animation studio was here.
I don't think weather-wise that we are a great fit.
Okay.
For having a park unless it's going to be seasonal. The same way that we do have a small amusement park here called Worlds of Fun, and when we were kids it was Worlds of Fun.
Right. Yeah.
And kind of like Epcot, had kind of the countries aspect, had kind of the lands aspect of like, you know, different rides were themed after different areas of the world. And
in Africa and Germany and
yep.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was a lot of fun when we were little.
Right.
Because we didn't realize just how rundown parts of it were. And they've been taken over by another company and it's gotten better, but it's seasonal.
Right.
It is not open year round. It is only open during the summer, but it takes me to thinking, I almost think you have to do for weather, if you want it to be able to be open year round in this country, you almost have to do something like in Texas.
Right. I'm going to argue the other side of this. Okay. And say having a Disney park that has the opportunity to get some snow opens up some bigger doors and bigger windows. Paris gets snow. Tokyo gets snow. It's been done before, and it could really open up some things, especially in the holiday season. If Disney had a park open in the U.S. that got some snow during the holiday season, it would be phenomenal. If they didn't have to use Snope.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. That would be awesome.
But you also we have the same issue that Florida does as far as the unpredictable storms.
Right.
So you have storm systems that come up, and unlike Florida, that typically, they don't usually have a lot of days that are just like, unless they've got like a tropical storm that is coming through, you don't have where it's like just, it'll rain for like 4 days straight.
Right.
We have situations sometimes where it just rains, and it's rainy and cold and cloudy and gross for like days in a row. And how do you deal with that? Great. Yeah, you're right. The snow and that kind of aspect, especially around the holidays, would be amazing. How do you manage that if it is just cold and miserable? And all I can think about is sitting out at like some of our kids' games where we have just been miserable.
Right. No, that's a good point.
And it's cold and it's wet, and like there's no opportunity to like break from that.
Right.
Whereas like in Florida, typically when you have that, it's at least either A, warmer. When that's happening, or B, it's short, like, hey, it's going to rain for the next couple of hours, and then this afternoon it's going to be nice again. Right. Where it like blows through really fast.
Right.
How do you manage that aspect of it, of the cold and dreary?
Yeah, no, I think that's difficult to do, but it's the same way that you'd have to manage the super hot walking on the surface of the sun type temperatures that you'd get down in Texas. Like,
we get some of those same temperatures, though.
We do. They get it on a more consistent basis.
That's true.
And unlike Florida, you at least get, I know some people don't think it's a good break, but you get those storms that come through every day. You don't get that rain in Texas. You're going to have a whole lot of dust and a whole lot of sand in a lot of those places in Texas. Especially the places where they still have the land to do that. That's going to be close to an airport, a big enough airport.
Yeah.
Because when we were going through this, I was thinking, and I was like, you know where it'd actually be pretty good to be somewhere close to like Houston.
Yeah.
Actually, because that way they can also build up the port down there for the cruise line.
Right.
And they could be cruising in and out of there. So maybe that's a thought, but I'm afraid it's going to be too hot. Like Florida's hot. Texas is as hot. And it's going to still be humid. And I haven't spent enough time in Houston to like...
It's been a long time since I've been to Houston.
I just know what I've heard.
Kara, chime in on this. I've got a couple of good friends down there.
Yeah, I don't know how much it would work or how far that they would have to go outside of Houston in order to make
Right.
that happen at this point. I thought about Houston. I thought about maybe outside of Austin, but Austin's growing so fast. It would be so hard to buy that can.
Ridiculously fast.
Right. And then Dallas isn't going to work.
I actually was just looking because I was like, man, I'm trying to remember, like pulling my state history. I pulled up my phone to look and see. I was trying to determine like where, like how far south is Orlando versus Houston.
Right.
Like which one is closer to the equator, right? And actually, Orlando is farther south than Houston. Not by a ton,
right?
But that's really I was actually in my brain thinking that Houston was
right
farther south, but I guess you'd be more if you were going like down towards Corpus Christi than Houston. So I mean, then you'd be a little bit farther south, but
no, Texas has always been the big rumor, and which actually would fit because Universal's putting in a small park there specifically designed for kids.
Yes. That's going to be different.
That's
than
completely
a
different
lot
than
of things
Epic
that
Universe.
that's happening in Florida or that has happened in California.
Right. This is just something that came up. Much smaller park, a one-day park that you go to. They got a few rides, and it's just a place to go for families with small kids.
Yeah.
No big thrill rides, just like a couple, like a boat ride and maybe like a carousel and a few like very young child-friendly rides. If Disney were to fulfill the rumor of going in Texas, that would...
what would you do? If it was going to go to Texas, what would you do? Where would you go?
Where would I go? I would probably... I think down by the Houston area, but I don't know enough about that area. The thing I'm worried about is so much of Texas is so wide open.
Yeah.
But Disney, like horticulturalists are phenomenal. Like they can get trees and stuff to grow anywhere to give you some shade. But until then, it's going to be like Animal Kingdom whenever it first opened and walking on the surface of the sun.
Yeah.
Like, it's brutal hot. It'll be brutally hot. Or back in Toy Story Land, where everyone's begging for shade. It's going to be the same thing. The other thing I worry about down there, and this is, again, just going off of different things I've been told by people who either live down there or visited down there, you get so many oil refineries that it doesn't always smell real great. And there can be a bit of a smog issue. But, I mean, it doesn't seem to affect Disneyland, so I don't know.
Yeah, but there wasn't a smog issue per se or the same oil refinery issue. Like, there wasn't the same issues when Disneyland was built.
Right.
That there are around that area now.
So, another area I kind of thought of outside of Texas that might work is outside of Oklahoma City.
Really?
Just because it's still, I'm thinking, I want to be west of the Mississippi. If I'm west of the Mississippi, then all the Universal Marvel stuff is out the window.
True.
You can do all the Marvel stuff you want. And still put you close to a bigger airport, plenty of land, and Oklahoma's pretty wide open. The thing that really throws me off on that is the tornadoes coming through there.
Yeah.
Oklahoma gets a lot of them.
So do we.
Not compared to Oklahoma.
No, not compared to Oklahoma. They definitely get way more. But you know, you talked about the kind of the dust and the like the dry and the like.
Yeah.
That's going to be a problem there too.
It is. I don't know that there's necessarily a perfect spot to put it. South Missouri would be great. Northern Arkansas. Problem is, that's a whole lot of hills.
That's a whole lot of hills and no real transportation outside of car transportation to get down there. It's not like you have a rail system from Kansas City or St. Louis.
And Branson's airport's tiny.
Yeah, I mean
Little Rocks is tiny.
And they're not going to grow to a point of being able to be tourists. I mean, Branson is a tourist destination.
Right.
Like, there's no doubt whatsoever. Branson area is a tourist destination. You have a theme park there already in Silver Dollar City. You have other touristy things to go and do, and
Right.
shows and activities and hotels and a lake, and
Right.
like you have stuff to do in the area. And so that's fantastic as far as like maybe adding on and adding to, and like being able to plug into something that already exists and people already go to. But the people who go to it, 90% of them drive to it.
Right.
They are typically people who live within a one-day driving distance of Branson, and or have traveled to a one-day driving distance of Branson. Right? They've traveled to Kansas City, or they've traveled to Little Rock or something, and they drive up.
Right. The other problem we run into with like Branson and South Missouri is the whole political ramifications of right now they're not going to mesh well. No. Which
is a whole
nother story,
different topic that we're not going to discuss today.
Yeah.
I would say I love the idea of there being a park here. Well, KCMO.
Somewhere along the I-70 corridor is what I'm going to say. Somewhere between Kansas City and St. Louis. Maybe it's Columbia, but somewhere in between there. It's either in between Kansas City and Columbia, or it's in between St. Louis and Columbia.
But what do you do as far as like people getting there? Like, do you put in a new rail system, or do you add like an Amtrak line? Like, do you like plug into the Amtrak line that's already
Possibly, because there is a big Amtrak line. The construction was already going on for the high speed that was supposed to go in between underground between Kansas City and St. Louis. Maybe you just expand that more and connect that to an airport.
Or maybe that becomes another attraction, is that you can come in via...
Maybe, but right now it was only supposed to be in between Kansas City and St. Louis, and it was partially getting done, and then it died.
I didn't think it was underground. I thought it was above ground.
I thought it was under. Because I thought they were using electric magnet, like it was like electric magnetic and would shoot you. I think that's, if it was up here, that's where I would go. But overall, probably Texas probably makes the most sense, because you're gonna be able to get the most land cheap. You got to figure out some way to make the terrain work for you.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part for me is that going anywhere besides Florida right now, we pretty much just brought up all the cons.
Right.
There's a few perks. There are, you have connections, you have the opportunity for, like kind of having a real Christmas and cold weather activity things, and but how do you do that? How do you do that well without having to at least have part of a park be seasonal? Right? I mean, you're going to have so many rides that just aren't able to operate.
Because it's cold.
Because it's too cold.
Yeah, because it does get cold here. I mean...
it was 4 degrees when we walked out this morning to take the kids to school. So the thing that I think makes the most sense to me right now is, like, if you were going to talk about, like, Disney was like, hey, we're going to open up a new park, quote unquote, new park, right? Is, to me, that is a fifth gate in Florida. Right.
I think that makes the most sense to me, too, with the, I guess, caveat of they also agree with Universal on the rights to the Marvel stuff.
Yes. I hate having... Well, some of it's in Cali, and some of it's, like, and you can't have it here. Like, Universal has it here, but it's over in Cali, like, and you want to meet, like, it's annoying. It
is. And I think the fifth gate makes the most sense. It's been rumored or hoped for. Is that a word? For quite a while. There has been work permits that have been put in. They put them in every year of, like, hopefully these things can come in the next 2 years. And one of the ones that came through this last year was a major park and 2 minor parks. And that was as specific as it got.
Right.
So, to me, that says, like, a major park is a whole nother gate. Yes. Another Magic Kingdom or Animal Kingdom or something like that. A minor park is going to be like a water park. That's what it says to me.
But it was 2 minor parks.
Right.
Was the permit.
Right.
Again, we're not trying to spread rumors. We're not trying to... This is us dreaming and taking information that we know is out there and us dreaming it up. What would you do if you were going to do a 5th gate in Florida, what would you create?
So, you want me to go?
Yes.
Okay. So, with mine, it's going to be fairly similar to what's going on in Epic Universe, okay? Listen to me. Okay, with this, like I said, we've already agreed to terms with Universal about Marvel.
Okay.
Okay? So in this park, we are going to have a modern classics era. Okay? And by modern classics, I'm going to go ahead and say everything from Aladdin up to present.
Okay.
Okay? We are going to have a Marvel area.
Okay.
Okay? Then we are also, because everyone was so excited about this, instead of sticking this over in Magic Kingdom behind Big Thunder, we're going to have a villains area. And we're going to have these 3 big lands here of Marvel, villains, and modern classics.
How does modern classics, how is that different than, say, you have Ariel's Grotto and you have Ariel's like area in New Fantasyland?
Right. So what I'm looking at is, if you look over in some of the other parks, there is a Arendelle that's being built.
Right.
Right? There's a Zootopia that's being built.
Right.
They desperately want to do something with Encanto. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They are throwing all kinds of things against the wall for Moana. Right? If a movie already has a ride over in another land,
mm-hmm.
or like Little Mermaid, she's already got a ride.
Yeah.
She's not getting one in this land. Okay?
Okay, well, so you're talking Aladdin has the magic carpets.
That's not a real ride. Give me a break.
It's not, but it exists. You have the aerial ride. Like, you can't talk about the 90s ones. Like, you would have to be 2000 plus. You're going to have to pick and choose. Not every movie is going to be able to get a ride, just not how every... But I don't understand how you theme that differently than Fantasyland. Like, how do you theme that different than what they've already expanded on in Fantasyland?
You have Agrabah. You have...
okay, that's Adventureland.
You got one little twirly ride. Give me a break. Like, I want a full, like, Agrabah. Okay? Or was it Corona? Is that where they're at for Rapunzel?
Yes.
For Tangled? Or like the Arendelle that's being built over in Tokyo.
Mm-hmm. Which looks amazing.
It looks amazing. Merida gets some love in there. Like, you can still put stuff in there that's not necessarily over in Fantasyland, or it just barely is a blip. Like, come on, Rapunzel deserves more than some restrooms and a hide and seek Pascal.
No, don't get me wrong. I totally agree that they deserve more than that. But my question is, how do you build that and build that out and sell that when those things already exist in Fantasyland? Because the things like when you're talking about building Arendelle,
right?
There isn't anything else like that in Tokyo.
No.
Like,
what's like Arendelle here?
No, like I'm saying, you could do that here.
Right.
You could do that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you could do the sections of these other stories that have some of these same characters, especially your like big princesses and characters that are already established as part of parades, as part of, dining, like character dining, that are already established as a part of, like, Ariel has her own meet and greet, and like Aladdin and Jasmine have a meet and greet area and all that. Like, you're talking about basically uprooting some of those things to a new...
If they're already established in Fantasyland, then they don't go over there.
I think the modern classics term is like throwing me. I'm like, what would you call it? What, like, so...
I don't know. I'm the idea guy, not the name guy.
Okay, so my thing goes to, because I'm good with the, like, I mean, I was already thinking about this. They talked about this in Blue Sky at D23, right?
Right.
My thing is, I would do the villain's 5th gate.
Yeah. I just don't want a pure villain's fifth gate. I think that you have to be able to draw other things in there. Just like I would love, like, I love Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want just a pure Marvel fifth gate. Just because I think it's going to, I don't want to say when I say to get old, but it's gonna, like, Marvel is changing so much. You have, like, you have big pieces there that are going to be there. Like, whether that's an Avengers Campus or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want that to be the only draw there because that's hitting a very specific population.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm trying to draw as many different age groups, populations that I can into this park.
I do fear if you were to do a villains one, my big fear with a villains one is not so much the like drawing people in or like drawing all ages or whatever that. For me, it is it becoming too dark.
Mm-hmm. I think if you have a full park of villains, it will become too dark.
I think the way that you could do villains is villains becomes that extension out from Big Thunder Mountain. When you walk down that path and you go, you have a whole new land.
Okay.
But it is like the villain, like. Now here's the thing. Here's where I'm going with this, right? So you had Descendants opened this up and created it for you.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Descendants storyline created a opportunity for that because in that storyline the villains have all been cast out into this other right, they're on this island by themselves.
Okay,
so you take that island that's out back there and you create this like villain island type thing and you go the route of they've been cast out.
Well, I also think you can have, I don't want to call it a new Fantasyland, the modern classic one I'm talking about, right? And the villains, and then your Descendants are kind of like, that's the kind of the bridge between the two. That's how those two parks, those two lands kind of melt together.
So why can't you do that though with it just being an extension out of Magic
Because
Kingdom?
I'm talking about a fifth gate.
I don't know that is enough to do, like that is different enough or standalone-ish enough to have as a fifth gate.
What if I add in another park in there with Pixar? And that way, then Disney World gets their Cars Land, right? You get something better than Laugh for Inc. for Mike and Sully.
What do you do with Toy Story Land?
Toy Story Land is already like just because you have Toy Story over there, like doesn't mean it can't show up over here. Or you have characters that show up in multiple different parks. Like I'm not just saying you're not going to give Toy Story their own land. Just because it's Pixar doesn't mean it has to be Toy Story. You can have a Pixar land.
No, I know, but
all
Hollywood
these other
Studios
ones,
already has a bunch of Pixar-based.
but they're not doing anything with them other than Toy Story Land.
No, they're not.
You got nothing. You got nothing. Only other real Pixar thing you got in everything is Mike and Sully, like the Monsters Inc. Laugh 4 and Nemo over in Epcot.
Yeah.
So actually, what I would
Buzz Lightyear ride.
Yeah.
Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor. You have Finding Nemo ride. You have everything that's in Toy Story Land. You have the Incredibles. Like
you got the area, but they're not using it for anything.
They are back to doing the meet and greets.
They're not meeting there. They're meeting in other parts of Hollywood Studios.
Sorry. Like you just already have established.
Yeah.
Like.
Fine then.
Let me just write down all your parades here.
Yep. Cars Land.
I'm like, what do you call? What do you do with it? Like, what is it? Like that. I guess that's my question. Is like. Epic Universe is combining all of these things, and I feel like what you're describing is just a like Disney version of Epic Universe.
Kind of.
And how do you sell that when it would be coming after Epic Universe?
Okay, so it's...
He hates it when I do this.
I do. You're gonna make me think, and it's later than I like.
It's past our bedtime.
It's trying to combine all these modern Disney favorites, and I'm including Marvel in that.
Okay.
And maybe that's Pixar, maybe that's not. And then it's...
I mean, I do like the idea of Cars Land.
I do. Now that we're talking about it, I think you could stick Cars Land out there behind Big Thunder, because then that terrain matches in there with Big Thunder's terrain. And then the stuff that they were talking about putting in behind Big Thunder, you put over in the new gate. You know what I'm saying?
Sort of. I'm just trying to figure out how you incorporate that into Magic Kingdom and the way that Magic Kingdom is
laid out,
and like the other land, like how that, you know.
Right.
How do you lay that out? But I mean, I guess it still would be a land. It'd be Cards Land and.
Right. I mean, I'm just thinking the color of Big Thunder and the colors in on specifically in with the racers, the one where you're like hopping in the car going through Disneyland, like through Radiator Springs, basically. Gosh. If Carrick's listening to this, he's going to be yelling at me right now.
Okay, in our defense, we have not been to Disneyland yet.
Right.
We are going. We will.
Right. No, do you have any ideas for a fifth gate? So I can rain on your parade?
It is really hard for me to think about a full fifth gate because I feel like anything that Disney would do right now with a full fifth gate, unless it is going to be its own, like, kind of, like, if you had the way that, like, Harry Potter could have been its own, like, not attached to, and it could have been its own thing for you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I understand that it kind of is, but, like, it's not, right? Like, for Universal. It could have just been its own. You could have had an entire park that is just Harry Potter and is not attached to another park. It is not like, fed with it's not like, it could have just been its own standalone thing, right? In that line of thought for me is like, I think because of the way Animal Kingdom being the newest park, the way that it is its own thing.
It's its own
theme,
yeah.
It's its own theme. I'm like, how do you theme, right? Magic Kingdom is based on fantasy.
Right.
Right? And I understand that not every aspect of it is, but it is. All of it is based on this like fantasy, this dream of like, you know, like that's what Magic Kingdom is.
Right.
Right? It's a kingdom of magic. It's just open fantasy. And so you have all these stories that are incorporated into that. So how do you take these other stories, right? These other pieces of that and create a fifth gate that doesn't compete with what is happening at Magic Kingdom, right? So if you have other things that are involved with like the princesses and all these other things, how do you do that without competing against? And I don't mean the parks all do kind of compete with each other for people and all those things like all the time, but how do you do that without it being like such direct competition, right? So I do think you could do something like a Cars Land, like some of the Pixar lands, or, you know, things that are kind of outside of what else exists for Disney. You could do an Encanto. You could do a Cars Land. You could do, and I say you could do Encanto because you are talking about just this other world that exists, right? This other entity that exists. I'm struggling with the aspect of how do you do this where you're not in direct competition with what already exists for the 4 current parks.
Okay. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that it's in competition with the other parks, because the other parks are already so busy
it is if it takes away from them as far as like and steals from them versus then creating like, because there is a difference between healthy competition and there being the kind of competition where it's like, nope, I'm going over there, I don't want anything to do with you.
Right. If it makes, like, if they were to do modern classics with some of the new princess movies or whatever, and it makes Fantasyland look awful, then the only people you're going to have really going to Fantasyland are
our generation.
Are nostalgia. It's going to be nostalgic. Yeah, I get what you're saying there.
Like, so it's not a thing of like, I love the idea of there being a Cars Land. I like the idea of that being like you could add that to Magic Kingdom. Absolutely think that could be an addition to Magic Kingdom. It would be a great way to potentially get rid of the awful cars in Tomorrowland.
Yeah, there's not enough room there for that.
No, not that. But I'm saying like because you would have something else in the park that would allow for, if you allowed for something else that allowed for a racing aspect with that, like the driving, like if you could do something else in Cars Land that gave you a similar experience, right?
Right.
But wasn't the like. I can't even be around that ride because of the smell, the exhaust smell.
Yeah.
Like, gives me an instant headache.
Right.
Like, I love the idea of that. I love the idea of there being something that you could really incorporate the villain aspect to, and like the whole Descendants theme thing, right? And this like couple of generations, right, of those stories, because that was a really cool take on what happens next.
Right.
Right? And how do you incorporate next generation stuff? How do you bring that up? How do you add that in? I don't know. I'm at a loss because I struggle so much with the aspect of like, we have all these really amazing things that have come out and stories that have come out in the way that the Imagineers and the artists and all of them have created these, and I'm like, how do you celebrate those? How do you define those in a tangible way in a park without having it be like, oh,
right,
like that's the last thing I want. I mean, because there's even stuff that's in Magic Kingdom now that our kids are like, oh, like, because it means nothing to them. They have no connection to it.
Right.
It's not something that I love riding Peter Pan. My kids ride Peter Pan and they're like, okay.
Like, oh, we gotta ride Peter Pan.
They like the queue.
Right.
It's fine.
They don't like waiting in that slow moving queue.
Like waiting in the, yeah, but I mean, like, it's a fun, like the way it's been redesigned. But when you look at the way that what the ride is, right? And I'm just using that as an example because it's an old school type ride.
Right.
It's an old school dark ride. Like there's nothing about it that's like fancy or like it's a lot of glow in the dark paint.
How cool would it be to be sitting in a boat, Rapunzel's boat, dark ride, going through the water, and the final scene when you come around the curve are the lanterns floating up?
That would be amazing. Why can't I have that in Fantasyland?
There's no room. Only way you're going to make that happen is if you make Small World go away, and you think people threw a fit about Splash Mountain. Like, that would, like...
Small World has broken records, though, for... the longest, like, continuous...
Yeah. It's no secret, I'm not a fan of Small World.
I'm not either, but I...
All right. Well, we would absolutely love to hear your guys' ideas. You can hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at Salute to the Ears. Like, whatever ideas you got, throw them at us. Would love to hear them.
Just keep it clean, people.
Yeah. This is such a great brainstorming idea, and there's so many different ideas and so many different ways to do it. Yeah, whatever ideas you got, we'd love to hear them. So with that, I'm going to tell you, go out and find your joy.
And have a magical week.